When you are just getting started in a creative field and implementing a few technology things, you for sure will get started and have a bunch of fails. So did I. And in this video, I want to walk you through these projects, what it was that failed and what I learned from this so that you don't have to make the same mistakes as I did. I think failure is a huge part of growth because without failure, we would never learn, we would never move forward or make progress. So I'm actually really happy that I had these experiences because now I know what to look out for. And I think the more time you spend in failure, the more successful you will be. It's like this roller coaster, like sometimes you have to go down and make this speed to go back up. Alright, so let's dive into the first interactive experience that I put together. When I was studying my bachelor's in multimedia design, we had one course and it was called tinkering. And this is where I learned how to work with Arduinos and sensors and little buttons that you press that make a light go on. And this was really one of my favorite topics that really excited me. So one of the first things that I tinkered together was this kind of interactive, immersive experience. And if you are not familiar with immersion, it's this feeling of being completely inside of an experience where multiple of your senses are being engaged, like seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling. And so I wanted to take this concept and build something together. So I had a few different things that I could use. I had an Arduino setup that I could use to press buttons. I had multiple sounds that I could play. I had my laptop on which I could play a video. And in the ideal world, I would have projected video like on walls with a projector. But the one thing that interested me the most was let's bring in something that's not very common to bring into an experience. So I wanted to work with smell. And I had a brilliant idea for this. Do you know these smell dispensers where you have a little candle and you put this kind of wax on the top and it starts melting and it starts making this smell? I wanted to implement this into my interactive installation. I want to have this environment, for example, called forest, play a forest video, play forest sounds, but also get some forest smells. And I wanted to create the same idea for ocean. An ocean playing video, ocean sounds, and ocean smell. So I went to this store, it's called Intratuin in the Netherlands, and they have all kinds of candles and interior and outdoor stuff. But they also had these little wax blocks that you could use for above a candle. And they did have the smell ocean, they did have the smell forest. I remember I also bought a smell called candy or something really sweet. And there was one other, and it could have been wood or it could have been flowers, but there was a fourth element that I took as a experience. But I just remember three. I'll try to find out if I could find the fourth one. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of footage available. I remember I made some photos, some videos, but they disappeared because it's quite a long time ago when I created this. It's at least 10 years ago. So I'll try to explain as good as I can how this installation worked. So I had an Arduino and the Arduino was attached to 4 buttons, simple press buttons. And those buttons, I kind of connected them inside of a wooden box, a simple box. I just kind of attached them to it, probably with glue. The inputs from these buttons to the Arduino I had connected to a Touch Designer file. Touch Designer is actually, in my opinion, the best software to work with when it comes to sensors, Arduinos, and this kind of data input and create something creative from it. So I took these inputs and then I used a little rotating motor that you could attach to the Arduino, and I would calculate the angle of this little motor so it would turn in specific 90 degrees every time when a button was pressed. So if you would press the first button, it would kind of stay in place. If you would press the second button, it would turn 90 degrees. At the third button, it would be at 180, and at the fourth button, it would be at 270. So it turned based on the button inputs. And inside of Touch Designer, I also set up that the right video would play and the right sound would play. But let me get to the fun part. This is where I added the smells. So with this turning motor, I was able to connect it to a little block of wood and some nails with glue, with hot glue. I attached this right in a cross on that wooden little block. So the nail would kind of like turn to the right direction. And on those nails, I would attach lids of bottles that would make this little cup in which I could place the wax. Then next to this rotating little device I created, which had now 4 cups and would turn in the right direction based on those button presses, I was able to put the candle under the current correct bottle lids. And it would start melting the wax and bringing that smell. So to my surprise, this really worked. And it was super exciting because all of a sudden I had added smell to the game. And I would play a video, you would hear the sound and you would start smelling the forest. I had the forest, the ocean, the other one I called the unicorn. So I had some video with unicorns playing, the smell of candy and some really happy music playing. And the fourth one, I will try to remember what it was. But it was actually a really fun experience. But then what was the failure? At the time where we were actually presenting these little installations we had created, all the projects we had created, and I was leaving this installation run for longer than 5 minutes. And that's when I started to notice that the lids from the bottles were moving down and moving off and falling off. And I haven't realized at all that the hot glue would be melting from the candle because the lid's made of metal, it takes the heat and it takes the heat to the nail, and this connection was just not proper. The hot glue started melting. Really not that much of a fail because it would be really easy to solve this problem differently. Maybe I could have made some little construction around the thing from metal. Just at that point, I realized, and it was already too late because this was the moment where I was presenting my projects. So what did I learn from that? It's so important to test your stuff. It's so important to take the time and really try it out well. Because this is where you iterate, this is where you get the real life feedback. So first lesson, test and test it well. Test it as if you were presenting to someone. So let me tell you about project number 2. And this was actually also when I was a student. It was a group project and we had a topic and we wanted to really play into people their emotions. Specifically into people their emotions of fear. So we had a really cool concept actually. We were interested in the whole stalking, online data protection, being careful about what you put on the web. And we took it quite far. We pretty much stalked our teachers and tried to get as much information as we could about them. But we also created a really interesting interactive installation. And we did this by creating a specific room. And we hang literally like sheets of black covering the lights and made a dark room. So we had this fabric that would really not let any light through. So we made a room, it was, I think, maybe 3 or 4 meters and it was a square. You would come in through the side and you would be able to leave through the side. But the most important thing is we had a projector to the wall behind you. And we had a mirror where people were supposed to look into. So if you would stand here and there would be the mirror in front of you, you would be able to see the wall behind you. Now with this mirror, we had standing a Kinect. And the Kinect, the device, it recognized a people's face. It could kind of take the facial features. We had to put in some lights because it was a dark room that would light up the face. And so we had created this video, a bit of a scary kind of horror movie vibes video about a hacker looking into your data. And the idea was that we wanted to make this a real like personalized video. So that when someone steps into that room, they would look into the mirror, they see something playing behind them that has their information on it. And at the moment they would turn around, it would disappear. You see, it gets quite complex, but the concept is really interesting because it's about what's happening behind your back. What's happening with your data that you are not aware of? And it worked quite okay. We actually iterated a lot of times. This is where we knew we had to bring in the lights to recognize the face with the Kinect. But the only thing that really didn't work out was the personalized video. Once we had people sign up, we were not fast enough to find the information, get the video edited, and then play it when they come back. We had maybe 20 people on a day coming to visit this installation. Even though we had built up a template where we basically only had to add the right details about someone. First of all, we didn't know how to scrape the web. Second of all, we didn't know how to automate placing this in a video. And third of all, not all of the information that we needed or were looking to show was for everyone available online, because a lot of people are actually looking out for their data. And I think the most important part was when people entering this experience, they weren't sure what it was about. Like when we explain the concept, it's so clear and it's such a clever way to kind of display this and work with people their feeling of lack of control and work with people their feeling of something's happening behind your back and that you are not aware of. But we did not have any way to display this information or to transfer this information so that someone would understand. Actually, when it was a bit crowded, people would walk in, walk out, we haven't spoken to them, and they would not be sure what they just experienced, what they had just seen. So I guess the biggest takeaway from this failing experiment is how do you deal with the clarity of your concept and how do you give the right information so that people understand what they are getting into. And on the other side, how to automate things and how to test it if it gets crowded, if it gets more attention than you expected. One really important concept I've learned as a product manager is stress testing. Because if you have something really nice developed and if you're just kind of testing it with 1, 2 people, maybe 10, what if it blows up? What if all of a sudden you get 1,000 people in 100,000? Will it still work? So we can call this scaling. So in this project, we had a problem with scaling and a problem with information. So let me tell you about my third project that failed. And this one was actually during an internship. I worked for a real case and a real festival. I was asked to work on an experience that would make people aware of human trafficking in third world countries, which is a really heavy loaded topic and it's quite intense, but I built a beautiful installation around this. Let me explain you a little bit on how it worked. So I call this project the break-in room. It was in a time where escape rooms were getting a lot of traction and I wanted to kind of like inverse these concepts to a break-in room. So we had a beautiful cage built. And in that cage, I had built an installation of all kinds of screens. Some really old TV screens, some more normal screens, some laptops. And I built all of this into a pile that was actually beautiful in the dark as already something on its own. But let me sketch the environment a little bit for you. This was a festival where people would be camping, where tens of thousands of people would come and visit this during the day. It was on a specific area, the youth area of this Christian festival called Opwekking. The cage also had a door and a lock. So I chained the lock and I built this kind of box, again with an Arduino inside that had an NFC reader. And an NFC reader is basically kind of like a sensor that would read specific little tags that were actually inside of a sticker. So I had created kind of coins in the shape of hearts and in the shape of rounds. And I attached those NFC stickers under a QR code that would kind of lead to the instructions. Now the instructions were to collect these coins and these hearts by taking place in all kinds of games that were played on the festival during the day, karaoke, when attending certain seminars, we would give out these coins and you could bring them to the cage and put them inside of the lock. And now the most interesting and technical part. I had all of these TV screens kind of mocked up inside of Touch Designer in the same order as they were stacked on top of each other. And from the bottom up during the day, I would let certain water rise up. So this is where it comes really back together to the topic. On the TV, we were playing videos of kids, of girls, of witnesses, of people who had been involved with this human trafficking. And they were really compelling stories from all kinds of people. And slowly during the day, there would be this overlay of water growing on top of those videos, so that the videos, they are not visible anymore. And every time when someone would throw in a coin to the lock, it would sink down again. Now the challenge was never to let it get underwater. And it has this kind of metaphor of how we just tend to kind of close our eyes, how it just kind of like gets out of our focus. But also the last part, on the top of all the TVs, there was one big red button that I created. That was basically the goal to press, so it would stop all of this water rising up. Okay, now I think you can already hear it a little bit in my story, but one of the things where I feel like I failed was there was just so much going on. And I could notice people just kind of getting confused as I was explaining. It was a beautiful concept, and I hope I was able to explain it in this video a little bit of what it should have been like, but it was a lot to understand. The topic on its own really heavy already, then the lock, the break-in, the button, the water, screens. There was too much going on, and people got kind of confused. They would walk around it, they didn't understand what it was for, and it didn't change their behavior or their thoughts. But there was one even bigger thing that kind of didn't help with this at all, and that was the weather. One thing I did not count on at all was that it would be extremely stormy. I had to put all of these sheets in front of it. I had to go middle of the night, haul things up because it was a huge storm that night. But during the day, the sun shined. And now, if you have any experience with putting your screen outside in the sunshine, you will not see a lot. There's just sun and there is reflection, but you cannot see what's going on the screen. So that was kind of heartbreaking. There was so much hard work in this installation, so much time and effort. Like I spent a half year only focusing on this, but you couldn't see much until in the night. And that's when it was beautiful. I would play all kinds of nice stuff. I had a big speaker there, but I kind of missed the point in my communication, making it way too complex. I think simplicity, not even simplicity, but focus is key sometimes. And I should have tested it. I should have thought about the weather. I should have maybe prototyped it in some smaller way and tried it out outside. It's the same kind of feel as with the first installation. It could have been avoided with more testing. But I think the part with the simplicity or focus of a project is also something I really learned over time. Like you can have all kinds of thoughts, connect everything, but if it's kind of missing the main line of focus, the main concept or the main message that you're trying to bring, then there might be just some parts that you'll need to remove. So all the things that I've learned from this, first of all, test and prototype and test and iterate. Try things out as if it was the final result. Second, think about scaling. Think about having 100 million people coming for it. Will it hold up? Or do you need to improve some parts? Then the last part, and it was in my second project and in my last project, it's all about getting the information clear. And sometimes if you have a specific message that you want to come across, it means cutting out a bunch of the things that are really nice, but they're extra and they don't really matter to the main topic. So even though I love bringing all kinds of perspectives together to brainstorm and come to a concept, when you are actually executing something and you have a strong message you want to bring, keep it a little bit simplified. Make sure that there is a focus and get feedback from people if they understand what it's about. And if they don't, then you might have to focus on more. Alright, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope this helps. Sometimes it really helps to kind of hear from someone else's mistakes, just so you don't have to make them. This definitely helped me in my journey really forwards. It helped me to understand what to take attention to, and that just gets more and more clear over time and the more you explore things. But if you are still here at the end of this video, I'm really grateful for you just kind of listening to my experiences. Thank you so much. If you're a creative frontier, please get in touch with me, send me a comment, or get into my Instagram, or we can chat. It would be really great. That's it for now, and I hope to see you around in my next video.